Started. Yes, this is like uh this is the introduction part. So we have like um a line of things we want to discuss today, but want to make it as friendly as possible. I don't know if that's the right word. Everybody's so serious. So this is what like a family meeting. We want to hear we want to hear the amazing speakers we have today and speak to us physically, tell us the story of their journey in diplomacy. And when I say diplomacy, because I think it's really important, I set that line, that track. When I say diplomacy, I don't say, oh, maybe your career as a diplomat or generally we are saying diplomacy in the general sense of it. When it comes to international relations or having to basically influence people to follow a particular path, that's diplomacy. Having to do things in such a way that you're able to de-escalate when maybe there's tension or something like that. Just generally being diplomatic, whether it has to do with transactions that you've had to share or like lead between countries or between companies in your country, whichever one it is, we are talking about diplomacy in the broad sense of it. So I think I really need to say that so that when we start the conversation, when I say diplomacy, you don't say, oh, but I'm not a diplomat. So yes. First of all, thank you to everybody for joining. I think more people will join in as we continue. We cannot wait for them because we have so much we want to unpack today. And we'll just kick off. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to all of our speakers that are here. Thank you, Esosa. So the beautiful Esosa is going to be my co-host today. Don't worry, you hear her speak, but eventually in time you will hear her speak. Would have the honor of basically directing how the webinar is going to go to make sure that we get as much value as possible. Okay, so I think that is that for the introduction. For the next thing we have on our agenda, I will be inviting Mr. Aitin to speak to us about ASLI because I mean it's ASLI that is hosting the webinar. So we need to hear a bit of what ASLI is doing and why you should get on board with what ASLI is doing. So Mr. Aitin, please you have the floor.
Okay, thanks a lot, Choma, and thanks everyone for joining. I see more people coming in. Natasha, always there for ASLI. Thank you. Anita, Nadia, thank you, everyone. So welcome to this event, and I thank you for joining. Special appreciation to all our discussants, all of whom continue to give immense support to ASLI. Before we started formally, I mentioned that we are having discussion with Henriette about an in-person course in Rwanda, so that it's not always just having virtual programs. You may also be aware that the Rwanda Space Agency is hosting the Global Conference on Climate Change in Kigali next June. We are partners to Rwanda Space Agency. Thank you, Henriette, for that. Alma, Nana, Sarah Jane, or SJ as we call her, they've delivered lectures at one time or the other at ASLI. The most recent one was last year's lecture by Sarah Jane during the course on maximizing international space cooperation. Very interesting course. The lecture was titled International Space Policy in Action, and that lecture was streamed during the World Space Week event organized by Alma. So it's nice to see the connections we all have here. I also want to say a big thank you to Aarti Holla-Maini, the UNOOSA director. It was later that I got to know, or I remember that Kupus is actually starting tomorrow, which is 25th. So definitely she's kind of busy today. And because of that, I think she's not able to be here in person. But yesterday, she graciously sent in a recorded message. So I think we'll play that message shortly. When we approached her to speak at the event, she just gave a prompt yes. And that was a very good encouragement for us at ASLI. In fact, some people are not here with us because they are presently traveling to Vienna as we speak. Majaja, for those of you who know Majaja Nonfuneko, she was one time chair of the legal subcommittee. In fact, initially she was going to be on the discussion, on the panel, but she's also traveling today, and I know a couple of others who are traveling. So we wish the different delegations from everywhere fruitful discussions and outcome. So let me just say three things about ASLI, which happens to be Africa's first space-focused think tank. One, ASLI has one clear vision, and that is an African space ecosystem that meets the developmental needs and aspirations of Africa, and that is globally responsible and relevant. This vision aligns with the vision of the African Union's Agenda 2063. And the African Union's vision is an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, driven by its own citizens and representing a dynamic force in the international arena. So you see how the vision aligns. Two, ASLI has two lenses with which it views and pursues its visions. And you may have heard me say this several times. The two lenses are one, the African Space Policy document, and then the other is the African Space Strategy document. These documents provide guidance for Africa's policies, positions, programs, and partnerships. The documents are available online, so you're very much welcome to go through them and explore them. Three, ASLI has three goals and objectives. These goals are one, to develop Africa's capabilities and capacity in space policy, strategy, law, governance, diplomacy, and leadership. So, like I usually say, we leave the science and engineering for the guys in the universities, while we handle those things that are not core science or engineering, but are very important for the ecosystem. So from the onset, education has been part of our core programs. We organize several courses. The third edition of the flagship Global Space Policy course ended early last month. We had about 18 participants from, I think, 7 countries, including France and Germany, which was also very inspiring, seeing people from outside Africa who are interested in the programs that we are trying to do. Next week, we are commencing the third edition of the flagship African Space Policy and Strategy course. And for this course, we usually give full scholarships to students and young professionals. We organize a competition which is called Space for Africa competition. And the result for the third edition of the competition will be announced this week. Another course is the International Space Law and Governance course, which we do in collaboration with McGill Institute of Air and Space Law in Canada. We started that partnership last year, and we look forward to having the second edition of the course starting October this year. Last year, we had our first hybrid course because most of our courses are usually online or virtual. But last year, we tried to do an hybrid course, and hopefully we start having in-person courses fully. That course was the Maximizing International Space Cooperation course. We have revised the curriculum and we have renamed it Space Diplomacy course because after interacting with the participants, the response was like they prefer, kind of like a tech or tush name, Space Diplomacy course. So we are going to have that course again this year from 13th to 17th October 2025. We have other courses, other programs in mind, and all these are available on the ASLI's website. ASLI's second objective is to support strong position on African space programs so that Africa can obtain optimum benefits from space science and technology. So for this purpose, we engage with sister institutions and national space agencies. With the inauguration of the African Space Agency last April, which I had the privilege of participating in, we shall be engaging with the agency as well. And then thirdly, to strengthen Africa's contributions in global space discourses, as well as Africa's participation in international forums. So we organize webinars, public lectures, roundtables, talks, colloquia, as well as advisory and advocacy activities. But I'll just focus on one major program, which is the African Space Leadership Forum. As we are aware, CUPU's member states have agreed to hold Unispace 4 in 2027. So we are working with colleagues and partners to organize Africa's thoughts and positions for the global conference. So we intend to have a series of these virtual forums and then conclude with an in-person event, which we call the African Space Summit. Most information about all this will be shared in due time, but you can just mark your calendar for now for the first Africa Space Leadership Forum, which is scheduled for 28th to 29th of October 2025. We've actually informed UNOOSA about this also. So we look forward to engaging bringing as many people as possible to the forum. For the African Space Summit, we are currently having 4 considerations when it comes to hosting. That's Egypt, Ethiopia, Nigeria, and South Africa. But we shall, by the time we conclude the discussions also, we shall communicate to the host, the venue, and the date. But let's focus on the agenda for today, which is to commemorate the International Day of Women in Diplomacy, although we are focusing on space diplomacy. The idea to hold this event actually came last year when UNOOSA released a kind of a booklet titled Gender Mainstreaming Toolkit for the Space Sector. And then they released another report, which was called Landmark Study on Gender Equality in the Space Sector. So last year, we had planned to introduce gender mainstreaming in the course that we did, that's the Maximizing International Space Cooperation course, but due to time schedule, we could not have it. So we planned that this year we'll have this event, and then during the space diplomacy course that is coming up in October, we have that lecture. The theme of the event is what? Breaking barriers, empowering women in space diplomacy for more inclusive future. So we look forward to, or I look forward to the deliberations and recommendations that will come out of this roundtable. Once again, I thank you all for joining the event, and let's have a good time. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Item. That was a bit long. I hope you guys are still here and you guys are still listening. But basically, so from here on out, it's going to be really interactive and very engaging. So for the next item we have on our agenda today, we have the opening remarks by Aarti Holla-Maini. But like Mr. Item explained, she's not here. She's the director of the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs. That's UNOOSA. So Kupus is starting tomorrow. So there's a lot of preparation going on. And as is expected, Marty is going to be at the forefront trying to make sure that everything is set in place before it commences tomorrow. However, she has sent us a video recording that we are going to play. But before we play the video, I'm going to read her bio, and then we can play the video recording. So please, you guys should bear with me. Let me read directly from my system. Okay, so Aarti Holla-Maini is the director of the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, that's UNOOSA, having taken up post on 18th September 2023, following her appointment by United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Ms. Holla-Maini brings over 25 years of experience in the space and satellite sector, working predominantly with international organizations and regulators. Prior to the United Nations, she held the post of Secretary General of the Global Satellite Operators Association. She is a recognized leader with a strong track record in forging public-private and cross-sector partnerships, high-level advocacy at the international level, strategic communication, and managing diverse stakeholders. She was one of the chief architects of the Crisis Connectivity Charter established in 2015 for emergency telecommunications via satellites with the United Nations World Food Programme's Emergency Telecommunications Cluster, and has on multiple occasions secured recognition and policy support for space technologies to play their rightful role in connecting the unconnected in Africa, Europe, and beyond. So yes, that's Ms. Aarti's bio. Ms. Item, please, I don't know if you could play the video from behind. Sorry, guys, 1 minute so we can play the recording.
Please, can you hear that?
No, no, we can't. It's
Oh, okay. Sorry. It's let me see. Again, share sound.
And I have the privilege of being a woman working in diplomacy.
What about now? Okay, so I'll start from the beginning again.
Dear students and young professionals around the world, my name is Aarti Holla-Maini and I have the privilege of being a woman working in diplomacy as I serve as the Director of the UN Office for Outer Space Affairs, also known as UNOOSA. I'm sorry that I can't be with you in person for this important event, but I'm grateful to the African Space Leadership Institute for the opportunity to address you today. Today we commemorate a very special day, a day established by the United Nations to recognize the vital contributions of women to diplomacy and to reaffirm the importance of their full and equal participation in decision-making at all levels. It is also a moment to reflect on the barriers that still hinder gender equality in diplomacy, especially when it comes to the space sector, and to renew our commitment to overcoming them. You are here today because you have chosen, or you're considering, the path of space diplomacy. I have come to realize that diplomacy is more than a profession. It is a powerful set of skills. The ability to communicate with clarity and to listen, not just with our ears, but with the awareness that our counterparts may come from cultures that are less direct, more reserved, or that speak entirely different languages. It is essential to effective collaboration. Diplomacy calls on us to understand what our counterparts are communicating, even when it's unspoken, and to analyze with precision, making decisions that advance both progress and unity. It requires adaptability, cultural awareness, emotional intelligence, and above all, a deep commitment to building bridges where others only see divides. Diplomacy is more than a function. It is often the solution. It allows us to navigate misunderstandings peacefully and discover common ground amid diversity. And I can tell you that nowhere is this more powerfully demonstrated than in the realm of space diplomacy. At the United Nations, we represent not one nation, but 193 member states, who 80 years ago chose to unite under a single flag. UNOOSA is the only entity with a mandate fully dedicated to outer space. We serve as the Secretariat of the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, which began in 1958 with just 18 members and now has 104. I have to tell you that when I sit on the podium and look out at the delegates participating in these meetings, I see many women on multiple delegations and from all continents, and this is the space sector we're talking about. Isn't that inspiring? COPUOS operates on the basis of consensus among its 104 member states, a challenging task and precisely where space diplomacy shines brightest. We bring nations together to ensure that space technology, data, applications and services are harnessed for the benefit of all humankind. It is work that is as complex as it is inspiring. I have to be honest, diplomacy is new to me. I joined the UN less than 2 years ago, coming from the private sector, which is very different. But I knew it was time to shift gears, to take on a new challenge and to grow my skills in service of a greater purpose. Like many of you, I'm still learning every day, and that journey is one that I value deeply. Space naturally inspires, but many leaders, including those at the helm of international organizations, often don't recognize the role that they can play in driving meaningful change. True transformation requires strong, visible leadership. To embed space and gender equality into institutional culture, we must first elevate space to the highest levels of attention. That's why, in February this year, for the first time ever, women astronauts, past, present and future, gathered at the United Nations in New York, joined by member states from all 5 regional groups. The event sparked inspiration across delegations, with numerous states affirming the importance of uplifting women in STEM. Building on this momentum, UNOOSA, through our Space for Women project, is committed to fostering more opportunities to spotlight women leaders in space, to deepen engagement with member states, and to continue providing mentorship. To date, we have mentored over 260 young women and girls, and we've engaged with more than 370 experts globally. And this is only the beginning of the journey. To all of you, future diplomats, leaders and change makers, I wish you a meaningful International Day of Women in Diplomacy, and I wish you every success on the path ahead. My personal advice, take time to reflect deeply, commit to continuous self-improvement, and never be afraid to show up as your authentic self. May your journey be bold, impactful, and guided by purpose.
This is the part where we clap. Amazing. Thank you very much to the director in Absesha. So I think during the video she had mentioned something about Space for Women. And I think I'm happy to announce that I was a participant of that program in 2021. I mean, Ms. Aarti had taken up position for director of UNOOSA in 2023, but then before then we had Space for Women, and I was selected as a participant in 2021, and it was really a very beneficial program. Basically, aided me in directing my steps, sort of directing myself sort of I was just basically still starting out in the space industry, so it was really important for me to have some sort of a direction, and it was really nice having an older colleague in the industry saying, oh, this is what you could explore, this is what you should do. And I think that's like really important. So amazing program the director is working on. So yes, we are done with the recorded part of the section. So now we are going to the live part of the session where we have to interact, discuss, basically talk about the topic for today's webinar. But before I start, we have to give honor to whom honor is due. I mean, Nigerian guys. So there's this thing we do in our country, yeah. So when we have like speakers come up, I know other people do it, but then we do it with extra razzle dazzle. We do it with extra energy, with extra drama, basically, if you want to call it that. But essentially, before we start off, I would like to read out the profile of the speakers we have on board today. So their profile is very long. Well, because you don't have plenty time, I would try to compress the profile of all of the speakers in as small paragraphs as possible. So we can just go over to the question and answer section, and then yes, we'll continue the webinar. So the first person we have here today is Henriette. So Henriette here, when I saw your surname, I was like, okay, I'm going to do my best. But because I don't want to embarrass myself here today, please, can you turn on your microphone and please help us pronounce your surname?
Cyuzuzo.
Cyuzuzo. Is that right?
Yes.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'm going to pronounce that now. Okay, sorry, 1 minute. Let me get the profile up. Okay, so the first person we have here is Henriette Cyuzuzo. She is an international development professional with expertise in strategic partnerships and program coordination. She serves as an international cooperation analyst at the Rwanda Space Agency, in bracket RSA, where she leads international engagement efforts and promotes the use of space technology for sustainable development. Her role includes building partnerships with space agencies, government institutions, and intergovernmental organizations to strengthen Rwanda's presence in the global space sector. Henriette, please say hi to the house.
I didn't hear the last part. I think you're breaking. What was
Sorry,
the last
I said
part?
you should say hi to the house. So basically, I've done your profile. Say hello.
Okay.
Do you want to say
Hello.
like 1 word, 2 words before you go over to the next speaker?
Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Henriette, and I'm happy to be here.
Great, amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so the second person we have is Alma Okpalefe. Okay, so Alma Okpalefe is the executive director of the World Space Week Association. Previously, she served as company secretary and legal advisor of Nigerian Communications Satellites, that's NICOMSAT Limited, where she oversaw legal services, international cooperation, and corporate strategy. She also served as the project secretary for NICOMSAT 1R and NICOMSAT 2 satellite project. Alma, please, can you say hi to the house?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me yet again. It's always a pleasure to work with ASLI and to see the usual suspects here, Natasha, Taiwo, etc. So I'm looking forward to the discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so the third person we have is Professor Nana. Professor Nana, please, are you on the call? I don't think I've seen. Is Professor Nana on the call? She's not. Okay, so I'm still going to read her bio in absentia. Hopefully she gets to join us before the webinar is over. Sorry, 1 minute. Let me get this up. Okay. Professor Nana Amba Browne Klutse is a distinguished physicist, climatologist, and academic leader currently serving as the CEO of Ghana's Environmental Protection Authority. In addition to her academic pursuits, Professor Klutse has held numerous leadership roles. She previously served as head of the Department of Physics at the University of Ghana. She was also vice chair of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC Working Group 1 for the 7th assessment report, as well as lead author for the IPCC's 6th assessment report. She was the only female member of the SY African Union Space Working Group. Beyond academia, she has ventured into politics as a two-time parliamentary candidate. Yes, okay, so that's the profile for Professor Nana. And finally, but definitely not the least, we have Masera Gill. So, sorry, Masera, can you turn on your microphone? Turn on your microphone.
Hi, how are you?
Okay, please, can you pronounce your surname? It looks so simple, yeah, but I just want to be sure I'm actually pronouncing it correctly.
Yeah, so it's Gill. So if you think of a fish's gills, I always do that. So yeah, Gill like gills.
Okay. Gill. Oh, okay. Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'm going to go ahead now. Okay, so Sarah Jane Gill currently leads the position Navigation and Timing PNT team at the UK Space Agency, bringing together stakeholders from government and across the sector to deliver the UK's objectives for PNT. Having previously held roles as the Chief of Staff, Head of European Space Agency Policy, and the Head of International Relations at the UK Space Agency, she has worked in the space sector for almost a decade. She has also worked in the fields of space law and regulation, space domain awareness, and on high-level strategy and policy. Prior to joining the space sector, she worked as a geologist in the diamond mining industry in Namibia and later with the Natural History Museum, developing ESA's sample analog collection of terrestrial materials that could be used to simulate the geology of the moon, Mars, the moons of Mars, and C-type asteroids. Masera, please say hi to the house.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for inviting me here today. I'm really looking forward to these discussions and always happy to support the ASLI. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. So now, this is the time we've been waiting for. I'm so sorry my torchlight is on. I'm trying to make sure you can see my face. Okay, so the first part of the webinar is going to be before we start the question and answer session proper, we want to be able to hear your story, basically, about your journey in diplomacy. But because I want to, we want to get as much value as possible from the answers you're going to give us. We have captured the question perfectly. So give me 1 minute, let me also with that. Okay, so the question we have here is, to kick things off, could you briefly share your journey into diplomacy or experiences where you've had to engage in diplomatic action or negotiations, challenges you faced, and key lessons you've picked up along the way? We would love to hear your story in 5 minutes. Okay. Okay, I know your story is very long, but please condense it in 5 minutes. We want to hear your story. Basically, just speak to us. And remember, diplomacy in the broad sense, not just diplomacy as to or international relations or being a diplomat and all of that. So let's see. Who do we start with? Okay. So, Henriette, we'll start with you. I mean, we started reading your profile first. So
Thank you, Chioma. Thank you. Thank you for the great introduction. Hello, everyone. As Chioma mentioned, my name is Cyuzuzo Henriette, and I work for Rwanda Space Agency as an international cooperation analyst. Briefly, how I started my journey, I can start with my education background. I studied diplomacy and foreign policy. That was my concentration, both undergrad and masters, but also focusing on the international relations part. That was in Nairobi, Kenya, the United States International University. But immediately after graduating, there were no opportunities for me directly in diplomacy. So I started my career journey managing different projects and also in the events industry. But from what we heard from Aarti, when you talk about diplomacy, it's not really about space diplomacy or even the political part of it. Even in our daily lives, we experience diplomacy. We end up communicating to different individuals to earn what we want, which is basically what diplomacy is. So when I was doing events, when I was doing different projects, that was with the Smart Africa Secretariat. I think some of you here know about the organization. I ended up having the curiosity to know what space really is. And that was actually after the establishment of the space agency in Rwanda, because we have a new agency that was recently established in 2021. And then I joined in 2022, early January, as an international cooperation analyst. But throughout my journey, I have always loved diplomats, how they talk, how they handle different projects, different deals to earn what they want without fighting. The keyword there is without fighting. So that's how I really joined the space agency, and that's how I'm contributing to see what I can want. And how do I do this? We have developed an internal strategy. We have a strategy, and with everything that we want to achieve as a space agency, that's why I narrowed down and to see as an international cooperation analyst, which space agencies should we bring on board? Which agencies do we want to bring? As I mentioned, our agency is new, meaning the space sector itself is new. So the strategy and the policy puts that together so that we have one line that we are following. And also being a woman in this country, it makes it so easy for us to pursue our careers, to pursue our dreams. So having the right leadership, having the space agency, that's why I decided that this is the right place for me. Yeah, thank you.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. So to be sure, I heard clearly. So you said after you left, I think your undergraduate studies and postgraduate, you said you didn't get a job immediately, so you had to like start off, guys. God. So there are not a lot of young people on this call, but this is the story for many of us. We are basically trying to navigate the after university drama, trying to get a job, trying to settle that and all of that. But I think one thing I'm really grateful for, and I mean that's why we're doing what we're doing at ASLI, for people to be able to chart their career early on. So even if you don't get a job with the government can be dramatic. Don't tell them I say that. But even if you don't get a job with the government, or you can basically know, oh, this is the part I want to tour, and you start on time to start taking programs, projects, basically things that will put you forward. So thank you so much. You have encouraged me, you have encouraged us, especially the young people on this call, for us to basically try to chart our path, even if we don't get what we're looking for. I mean, immediately after graduation. So yes. So, Alma, I know you're thinking, oh, I was the second person to read your profile, so I'll be but don't worry, you'll not be the next to go. I like taking people by surprise. So, Masera, please, let's hear your story.
Oh, thank you so much. And yeah, great to hear your story, Henriette, as well. I think we've all kind of gone through slightly different experiences in terms of how we end up in the space sector. And it's not always easy to sort of make a decision and say, I want to get into space, and then you just land. There's a long story for all of us of how we get there. And I started in the mining sector. So I studied geology, and I was also worried about how am I going to find a job. So I got a bursary, which meant that when I finished, I had a job waiting, which was very lucky for me, and a really nice position to be in. But so I was working on an offshore diamond mining ship, a vessel. And so you had people in the office who had ideas about what we should be doing offshore. And then you obviously had people who were living offshore a month at a time. And the sort of the pressures on the team and their priorities were quite different. And so sort of early on, I recognized that there was a challenge between the understanding of the different teams. So what was being asked for from the shore team, what was expected offshore. And so I kind of ended up in this position where I was trying to mediate and trying to find solutions to make things work better. And I think that's something that I've kind of carried through my career, regardless of where I've ended up, is trying to find compromise solutions, trying to find opportunities for people who I think would work well together, or organizations that work well together, but they don't necessarily know it. So if we talk about, I suppose, how I've ended up where I am, I did my PhD here in the UK in geology. And then I had an opportunity for my postdoc to start looking at rocks that are similar to rocks in space. And I never realized that there was that crossover, that geology exists in space, and that there's a lot of similarities between terrestrial and planetary geology. And so that gave me that opportunity to start looking at space as an actual career option, because for me, coming from Namibia, not a lot of people work in space, and it never really seemed like an opportunity or a possibility for me. So I grabbed it with both hands. And as soon as there was a chance to work in the space agency, I took it. And that was 8 years ago now, almost 8 years. And I've worked in many different fields. I've worked in, as you say, international relations. I've worked in programs as well. So I'm back in position navigation and timing, which is where I started in the agency. But again, I've had this opportunity to represent the UK to the EU, to the European Space Agency, at the UN. And it's just nuts when I think about it. I keep thinking someone's going to find out that I don't have the skills or experience to do that kind of thing. But at the same time, I think, having curiosity, being open to compromise, finding those opportunities to bring people together, those are skill sets that a lot of us have. And we just don't always think about how we can use that in a different environment. So it's been an incredible journey, and one that I hope to continue for many years to come.
Thank you so much. Sorry, can you confirm you can hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, great. So when you mentioned something about imposter syndrome, I was like, I think I can relate to that. When you're thinking one day they're going to find out that I don't really know what I'm doing.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, and it's
but essentially, don't be scared.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, what I've found has worked really well for me is because it got quite bad in the beginning, imposter syndrome. I really felt like somebody was going to find out and I was going to get into trouble. And then I realized that actually my ignorance is a bit of a superpower. The fact that I don't know things is actually okay. And asking people about things that they know that I don't know, it puts them at ease. It makes them feel like more comfortable to open up to you. And also they teach you. So you learn something every single day. And so actually, like, not knowing everything and not having all the answers and being open about that is actually a really powerful position, and yeah, and now I'm not afraid of getting caught out anymore, not so much. But yeah, it's just mad when you look back at your journey and you go, if I'd spoken to myself at 18 and said that this is where I'd be today, I'd be like, like, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. I was going to say, you don't need to be scared. If anybody ever finds out, call us. We'll speak to them diplomatically. But essentially, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. So finally, but definitely not the least, please, you have the floor. Tell us a story in 5 minutes.
Okay, I can do it in 2. Well, I would say in terms of diplomacy, I would say diplomacy is in my blood because my father was a career diplomat. So I was introduced to that from a very, very young age. And I believe that informed a lot of my choices. I always knew I wanted to work in Nigeria. I always knew that I wanted to work for the government at some point, because no matter where we were, it was always instilled in us, East, West, home is best. No matter what was happening in Nigeria, Nigeria was always going to be a country, and it's where you're from. So that was instilled from the get-go. So everything I did, even when I was at university, I did international corporate and commercial law. And at that time, there was a provision to do a certain course on space law, and they're actually offering money, right? They were actually like offering like £50. And so, of course, being a broke student, I was like, oh, yeah, I should do this. I should do this. But then it ended up being on a Friday, and I'd rather have my Friday off. So I ended up not doing space law. And also at that time, like I said, I was very Nigeria focused. So I knew that I wanted to end up in Nigeria. And I was like, nobody does space in Nigeria. So what's the point in doing space law at that time? Now, a few years later, I find myself in Nigeria. I finished law school, and I'm thinking, you know what? I think I'm done with this patriotism. I think Choma was in your position. So I was thinking, okay, how do I think it's time to go back to the UK? And literally the next day, my cousin calls me and she's like, we're interviewing for this place. Nigeria wants to launch a communication satellite. They need a lawyer. Have you done space law? I thought, no, I haven't. In spite of the £50 offer, I declined to do space law. But she's like, oh, you've done environmental law, you've done components, you've studied that in some capacity. Space is an environment, come for an interview tomorrow. So that's how I end up working on the first communication satellite in sub-Saharan Africa. And it was a very steep learning curve. In terms of diplomacy, what NIGECOMSAT is both a commercial outfit and a government-owned agency. So when you're engaging internationally, a lot of it is contractual. But then at the same time, because you're a government agency, then you start to move into the murky waters of diplomacy. So I would say like maybe some of the challenges of that is just really, for me, it wasn't really a challenge because like I said, diplomacy was always inbuilt to a large extent. But like dealing with our Chinese manufacturers, for instance, we were their first commercial international customer on that particular satellite bus platform. And so everything was received with so much pageantry until the satellite failed in orbit. Now, when the satellite failed in orbit, then you now cross over into, okay, you have contractual issues that you need to sort out. But beyond the contractual issues, there was the image of two countries at stake. A country that Nigeria trying to justify why they need a communication satellite, and China trying to prove to the world that their technology actually works. So trying to find a happy medium in that sort of situation. And it made me realize that a lot of, diplomacy is really just about securing win-wins, ensuring that nobody feels hoodwinked, and that people feel considered, that you considered their positions, you considered their traditions when you came or arrived at a decision. So that was that. And I stayed in NIGECOMSAT for a relatively long period. I feel like I'd seen the entire spectrum of the business, launched, lost, relaunched the satellite, launched various downstream applications. So it was time to do something different. And so now I'm at the World Space Week Association, not a strictly legal position, but very, very demanding, very diverse. I mean, you're managing events in over 90 countries that want to express space in a way that is most comfortable and contextually or culturally relevant to them each year between the 4th and the 10th of October. So you're managing a lot of because actually the World Space Week is meant for everybody. So you have a vast audience. You're dealing with all sorts of stakeholders, trying to manage all sorts of expectations. So that's another thing that diplomacy is. It's the management of expectations, trying to balance understanding the parties and managing their expectations. So I believe I've taken 5 minutes. So that's my nutshell of a story.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. So two things here. So the first one, it's about NIGECOMSAT. So the good thing is I don't have any baby NIGECOMSAT. But if it was NASDAQ, we would have what's more in this call now. But essentially, I love to see the amazing things that NICE concerts and NASDAQ, what you're doing in Nigeria. So it's always a pleasure to have somebody from the agency basically speak to us. But the second part is about the Workspace Week. I think that was in 2022. I'm not quite sure now, but I think it's in 2022. So I've done a personal project. So very funny story. The money I was supposed to use to do something, I used it to organize a Workspace Week event. At the time, I think I was still in uni. So we had this strike thing that happened in university. So I was at home and it was during the period of the Workspace Week October. So I was like, oh, you know what? This money I wanted to use to get this. It was a personal project at the time. So I said, oh, let me use it and sponsor this Workspace Week thing happening. And at the time, I know you're thinking, oh, what's the inspirational thing coming? Guys. So the thing is, I mean, there's a bit of inspiration because I love the fact that we were able to reach over 400 students at the time in 2022. But what I was supposed to get, I didn't get it. I'm very funny story. I don't think I've gotten it till now, till this year. But the good thing is, no, I'm not going to say what it is on this call. But essentially, I love the fact that we were able to reach out to young people about what was happening in the space industry globally. So when you said you can be really demanding, I can definitely understand. I cannot really understand because I mean we just did like World Space Week event in just one state and I almost lost it. But I can imagine how it is coordinating over 90 countries. But essentially, thank you for sharing your stories with us. It's really beautiful to hear this story because when we hear them, we believe, oh, if we had people do this, it means we can do it, and it's possible for us to even do it better when we're in such positions. So yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, my Henriette. Thank you so much, my Sarah. Thank you so much, my Alma. So for the second question, I feel like you guys have heard my voice so much. It's time for UNOOSA to speak. So UNOOSA is going to ask the second question we have for you today. But before we do that, I think it's important for us to take like a very quick photograph so everybody will not disappear before we get to the end of the webinar. Let's take our photograph now. Yes. So if it's possible, please, everybody should turn on their camera so we can see your fine faces. This will be proof, like in 10 years' time, this will be proof that you were there when we were shaping the history of diplomacy. The history of diplomacy. So please turn on your cameras. I don't know if it's possible for you to take the photograph from your end because I don't know why I can't.
Okay, I can do it. Are we ready? Anybody that wants to put on his camera, his or her camera?
Big smiles, everybody.
Okay, so the count of 3. Okay, yes, people are still coming on. Okay, can we go now at the count of 3? 1, 2, 3. Let me take one more. Okay, 1, 2. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, done.
My God, Mr. Itim, I had exhausted all of the smile I was supposed to use for the whole month of June and July. But thank you so much for taking the photograph. UNOOSA, please, you have the floor now.
Hello, good afternoon. Is that confirmed that you can hear me?
Yes.
Can everybody hear me? Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, and it's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to be speaking with women and in a forum like this because you learn and you pick up tips as well. So I'll just go to the next question quickly, and that's I've gained a lot from what you have all said, and you've spoken about diplomacy and how you approached it in different contexts and all of that, and your background. So I was going to ask, you've engaged diplomacy in different contexts, whether through space cooperation, international negotiations, regional engagements. Can you just share a defining moment from your experience and how that moment shaped the way you approach cross-border collaboration? So I will not go in any particular order. So anyone who wants to speak can just start and then, just go around the room like that. If you want me to repeat the question, I can repeat the question again. I'll just repeat the question. What's a defining moment from your experience and how the context of that moment shaped the way you now approach, cross-border collaboration? Each of you have come from different backgrounds and you have different approaches to diplomacy, whether it's space cooperation, whether it's international negotiations, or just regional engagement. So what's a defining moment so that we would defining moment and how that moment has shaped the way you approach cross-border collaboration? Yeah. So who wants to go first? In no particular order. So the first person to unmute themselves, I'll take them to be the first person that wants to speak. So
Esosa is being very diplomatic. She's giving you the floor. One person, any person, pick yourself.
All right, I will volunteer myself.
Thank you, Alma.
All right, so that's a really interesting question. I think I sort of touched on it in my opening remarks. I wouldn't say, I don't know if I can point to any one particular, defining moment, but one thing that I have found is that sometimes, a lot of the time, the answers or the route to trying to diffuse a situation that could potentially escalate is not often the most explored route. Like, for instance, I said that my father was a diplomat. But having said that, my mom was a teacher. But with hindsight, I think she was actually the better diplomat. Because I recall that with every engagement my dad had that was potentially going to escalate, the other party was always invited to our house. They were always invited to the diplomatic mission, and my mom always served jollof rice. So she always, invited them into our space, made them feel at home and presented Nigerian culture to them in the way she best knew how to. And which is why a lot of the time, if you hear me speak at different places, I always speak about soft power. Because people don't want to feel coerced into things like in a forcible manner. They would rather be, walked very gently into a solution, which is one of the things that we do with World Space Week. We try to present space to the world in a way that's very celebratory, in a way that's very inclusive, in a way that's hopefully fun, and in a way that you will identify with at your own national or regional level. And in so doing, by repeating that year in and year out, with time you find that you're part of a sector and you don't really quite know when you joined in. And I think that is really diplomacy at its highest, trying to get to a certain endpoint, but without forcing the hand. And so for me, that would be not necessarily a defining moment, but the way I approach trying to get diplomatic outcomes.
If I could go next.
Yes, you can go next. Thank you, Alma.
If I could add on what Alma just mentioned, I agree with her 100%. When you talk about diplomacy, you're talking about multilateral negotiations. You cannot do diplomacy alone. So one of the key things to also mention is that sometimes you meet people with different beliefs, and then it's hard to negotiate what you want. So that's where the diplomatic skills now have to be added. So as she said, in our daily lives, especially maybe if I can be specific in space sector, when we're even dealing with different stakeholders, most of the times what we are requesting is not what they are willing to give. But how do you navigate to the request that you have and to the need that they want to give you so that you all have a win-win game? Because when you talk about diplomacy, it's really a win-win game. There's no one who is supposed to gain more than the other. So navigating the whole conversation to achieving what you want without any any conflict is one of the things that have driven the negotiations or the key achievements that we have achieved as Rwanda Space Agents and also in our daily lives. Yeah. So it's really about how to communicate what you want and how willing you are to be flexible in that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Henriette. So I was the last person on the call, so
Yeah.
we're waiting for you.
Yeah, no, so I absolutely agree with my fellow panelists. I think so there was an interesting question that you raised, and I thought about it quite a lot about whether there was a sort of a defining moment for me. And I think I can sort of pin it back to when I started out in offshore mining. I was a woman in a position of authority in my 20s, and I was surrounded by these, big burly mining men. And I needed to sort of tell them to either slow down mining or speed up. And all of that had an impact on the diamonds that we were recovering. And to get them into a position where they would do what I asked, I needed to build trust, for example. But I also had a choice at that time. It was, am I directive? Am I the person who says you need to do this because I'm telling you to do it? Or am I approaching it in a different way where it feels like a compromise, where it feels like they're involved in the decision and that they have a voice as well that I'm listening to in order to make that decision? And so that whole experience taught me a lot about really listening, about understanding where the limits are of what I can negotiate, of where I can give in terms of compromise. But really also, again, as the other panelists have said, is sort of understanding perspectives from other people and where they're coming from when they don't want to do something, or if they want to do more of something. There's always something behind it. And if you can get into that and really understand what's driving it, it makes it a lot easier for you to find a compromise position or find a position where everybody feels like they're winning to a certain extent, It's quite a difficult balance, but that authenticity is really important as part of that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Alma. Thank you, Henriette, and thank you, SJ Gill. I think the things that I've heard and I've taken from her, and I want the audience to also take it, there's a bit of compromise, and then it's not always the best person the best diplomat does not always make the best person who would resolve disputes. And then you can also, from Alma's story, I think the thing I picked is you can use your cultural analysis to influence your ability to negotiate and be on the international diplomacy, that it could just crack. It could be something that cracks the open egg. And I like the jollof rice thing too. I like the jollof rice thing so as well. And thank you so much, Sarah, for your defining moment and being able to use that as well. So I'll just go call back Chioma, because it's Chioma's time to handle the next set of questions. Thank you very, very much.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Esosa. You see, you're very diplomatic about these things. Guys, should I continue or should I hand over to Esosa to finish up? Okay, don't worry, you don't need to answer. I've answered for myself. I'll continue. Okay, basically, I can see questions that dropping in the chat box. I can see Tando's questions. Tando, please, if you could hold on, because we have an interactive section where the participants can get to ask the speakers questions. But before we get to the interactive section, we have 2 more questions. Don't worry, we're almost done. We have 2 more questions. I asked 1 more, and then Esosa asks 1 more, and then we move over to the interactive section. So the question I have to ask, okay, I think I'm going to read the question first before I give some sort of context, before we go ahead to answer it. Sorry, give me 1 minute. Let me get it up. Okay, so the question is, many of the qualities we bring into professional spaces are shaped by our upbringing, cultural background, education, and lived experiences. What personal values or perspectives rooted in how you were raised do you find most valuable in your work? Okay, so the context I wanted to provide, I don't know if I should call it contest, but I wanted to share my story a bit so you understand the perspective from which we're coming from. So growing up, I feel like Alma beats me to it, because I was going to use an example of what my mom used to do when we were growing up, to show some sort of to give some sort of example. So growing up, my mom would always say, before you go for an event, make sure you eat at home. And you know how dramatic African mothers can be about it. They'll be like, oh, you need to eat. So you know, go outside their garden, embarrass yourself. And what that really taught me was self-respect. Because I just felt it was, I mean, let's just go. We are going to the events and they will share food there. Why do I have to eat at home before I go to the event? Say they will share food. But then what it taught me personally was self-respect. So if you eat at home, there is less tendency for you to embarrass yourself when you get to an event, and food doesn't get to you. And one thing that is not really talked about often enough about self-respect is that sometimes you may lose out, because sometimes you actually go to those events and they'll not give you jollof rice. They will skip your table and go over to the next table. But then other times you win. I mean, the self-respect can be beneficial, first of all, to you, or you can talk about the other person, because it doesn't get messy. You're trying to drag, oh, you're not giving me the offer. It's going to be stable, a lot of drama. And I think it's something that I carry on into professional spaces or just my everyday life, trying to have a bit of self-respect for myself before I can even start, demanding, you need to respect me and all of that from others. And then again, something I also learned from staying in my dad's shop. So my dad is a businessman, and being in the shop, you have to do a lot of customer relationship. I don't know if I do customer relations. I think that's the right word to try to put it. So you have to, some customers can be very dramatic, my God. And then you're wondering, you just came to buy market. Why are you being so dramatic? Just buy what you want to buy and leave. But essentially, if you want to retain, make sure that customers come back, sometimes it could be having a bad day or something, and that's why they're responding the way they're responding at a particular time. But basically having to stay with him in the shop and I mean, watch how he, handles the customers and some of the requests they come with. It teaches you that diplomacy sometimes is knowing that people may be having just a bad day, and the way they respond to you or the way they go about things is not necessarily a reflection of who they are, but a reflection of what is happening at a particular time in a particular context. So these are like the things that I carry into my professional life, and I try as much as possible to extend grace to people, because I mean that's also part of what diplomacy is about, extending grace to people. They can be, trying to be firm and all of that, trying to be dramatic, or you try to as much as possible. You see the terms I'm using, dramatic. I don't want to say violent or something so serious. I'm saying dramatic. So it's brings the tempo down, how intense it is when you say, oh, people are being violent or whatever. But essentially, these are like things I carry into my professional life, and I try as much as possible to remember self-respect, remember to extend grace to people. So yes, with that context, I didn't tell you the story. So you say, oh, I've told the story. So, but I had to just mention that. With that context now, I want us to basically talk about the skills that we basically the question that I asked. I can repeat it if you want me to. The value skills that basically from your upbringing, probably your culture. I think Alma already mentioned something about jollof rice. I mean, you can tell us stories if you want to. Yes. So who do we go with first? My parents have spoken first. My mama has spoken first. Okay, yeah. So Masera, please, you go first now.
Putting me on the spot here. Yeah, no, it's an interesting question, right? And I think this is for all of us, the way that we approach things will always be rooted in our parents, our upbringing, the experiences that we had. And so for me, I think one of the things I value a lot is, I guess, just being respectful to the people that I'm dealing with and interacting with, and being patient. And for me growing up, my grandparents lived with us for quite a long time when I was growing up. And we've all had various experiences of the older generation. And patience is definitely a virtue in that situation. And then also just learning to be respectful of different opinions and different ways of doing things, because the way my grandparents would talk about things or approach things is obviously quite different to myself, especially when I was a teenager and I had lots of opinions. It's just that kind of understanding how to communicate to a very different audience, essentially, and then how to do that respectfully and patiently. And I think one of the other things that's really helped me in my career, and especially when it comes to diplomacy, is curiosity. So I am driven by learning, and I'm lucky enough to be in a job where I'm learning something new every day. And that was down to the teachers that I had at school and my parents, who always encouraged me to pursue knowledge and to not just take an answer and leave it at that. It was never, you do this because I told you to. It's, okay, that's an interesting question. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And I think if you want to do diplomacy well, having that curiosity to really understand where a perspective is coming from a different stakeholder, or understanding the cultural background or the historic context of a decision that was made before your time, there's a lot that you can gain from just having a sort of a curious and open mindset. And I feel like those are probably the things that have shaped me the most professionally, is kind of my grandparents, and then approaches to learning and curiosity. Keep it short.
Thank you so much. I think that's like I said, there's some of the skills that people don't usually talk about all the time, but they are very essential. I mean, having to, and I think you really hit it on the head when you said having to communicate with different audience, but doing it respectfully. Because when you work with 7 people, you're like, oh my God, I mean, can't you understand what I'm trying to say? But then they're not understanding. So it's your job to make sure that you're able to communicate the ideas in the head, but at the same time, it's as respectful as possible. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Okay, so who goes next? Alma, next.
Okay, so what values? I would say one thing I have tried to carry through my career and everything is balance. And I think that goes back right all the way back to birth, because I was the last girl in a family of 5 with 4 older brothers. So on one hand, I was eagerly anticipated and greatly celebrated, and I walk in that celebration daily. I expect to be celebrated. But at the same time, I also had to fight for space with 4 older brothers. So, fighting for space is not new to me either. And so it's always been this intricate balance that you have to approach daily. Like even when you are heading a department, for instance, you still want to be the head, but as a woman, you don't want to be harsh. You don't want to be seen as being overbearing or just a nightmare to work with. So you're trying to balance that femininity with being able to be assertive when it's required and get the job done. So I would say, that's exactly what diplomacy is as well, trying to balance things. So I would say for me, it would be the art of balancing things, right? Trying to always make sure that you are being true to yourself, but at the same time, you are crossing all the T's, dotting all the I's. And even in terms of what I said earlier about knowing that I wanted to come back to Nigeria, even at that, I was raised with a very global focus. I was always very aware of international trends and things that were going on outside of the country and outside of whatever my immediate environment was. And coincidentally, the tagline for NIGECOMSAT, where I worked at for several years, was locally rooted but globally positioned. And that is exactly how I was, balancing that global outlook but being rooted locally. So that would be my balance.
Thank you so much for that very beautiful answer. When you mentioned you had 4 older brothers, I mean, this is how you discover things, guys. I didn't know this. What today I've discovered. Thank you so much for sharing your answer, Alma. So I noticed Professor Nana joined the call, but I think she has left the call. Professor Nana, please, can you confirm you're on the call? I don't know. I think I'd seen her. Okay, maybe we'll just continue and then hopefully she joins back and we can get her on board. Okay, so finally, but definitely not the least, we have Henriette. So please, your answer to the question.
Thank you, Chioma. I think to add on what my colleagues mentioned, I can talk about integrity and having a belief of teamwork. we all know our African homes. As someone just like Alma, the last born of a family of 8, for you to get things done, you needed a few resources from left and right. Yeah, so I believe at my I remember at my young age, for us to get even permission to go visit our relatives or to even get out of the house, I needed support from my elder siblings, either my brother or my sister. So what does that mean in my daily work here at Rwanda Space Agency? There's nothing that I'm going to communicate outside the agency or outside the country that the team hasn't worked on. I don't build satellites, I don't develop satellites, I'm not an engineer, but I can communicate what the team wants. So I end up bringing all my values on the table when it comes to my daily work at Rwanda Space Agency, because I have to first understand what they want, then for me to be able to communicate it, to see how we can promote it or even give it value that it requires. So in brief, it's teamwork. There's nothing that you're going to achieve in this world if you're alone. And when you're talking about space, something different. So teamwork is really key. That's all I can say. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so there's a lot happening on the chat box. Oh my God. Basically, thank you so much, Henriette, for that very beautiful answer. Really important for us to, I mean, it's always important to get context, because I wouldn't have thought that my Henriette is like the last born out of 8 kids. But again, it's important for us to hear the stories. It gives us this ability to bond and basically relate more with each other. It's not saying, oh, the person is like up all the way here, but when you hear, say, oh, this is also like somebody coming from an African home, and they can understand the drama that comes with being in an African home. So thank you very much for that very beautiful answer. Okay, so for the next question, so sappy. Okay, so I think Professor Nana joined at some point again. Professor Nana, are you on the call? I think she has left the call again. Okay, I think she has left the call. So we'll just continue. Hopefully she joins back. Esosa, please. I think Esosa is frozen. Her network may be poor. So maybe I'm going to just ask the question, and hopefully, okay, she's back. She's back. Esosa, please, can you confirm you can hear us? Esosa?
Oh, yes, I can hear you. Yes, I'm having a bit of network issues. Okay, so it's time for my question. All right, so I'll take over now. Okay, so apologies, everyone. I have a bit of a network issue. I think, I don't know, I think it's the weather or something, but okay, so I'll go to the next question. Thank you. Thank you for that session. So the next diplomacy involves making decisions and making decisions that could become policies, laws, regulation that could affect people. And then sometimes when you're trying to make a policy or a regulation for a location or a nation, okay, let me just use Africa as an example. You're trying to make policies for Africa, and there are no Africans in the room, there are no women in the room, and you want to make policies that could affect women or affect Africans generally. It would be very, I don't want to say weird, but it would be somehow, as we'll say in Nigeria, it would be somehow, because it will mean that the people who you want to talk about or who your policies are meant to affect are not in the room. They can't tell you what the real situation is, because what happens in Africa, what obtains in Africa might be quite different from what will happen in Europe or in the UK or in America or in China or somewhere else, because of cultural and different nuances. So my next question, that's what shapes my next question. It says, in your view, diverse voices help shape more inclusive and effective global policies. In your view, why is diversity, especially gender and regional diversity, critical in international decision-making? Again, I'll give that laxity. The first person to unmute themselves can speak. There's no particular order.
Okay, sorry. It's just that before the speakers come on board. So I just wanted to give a little bit more context. I don't know if anybody has seen this LinkedIn post that Dr. Olga had made. I think it was last week. I'm not quite sure now. About she had gone to an event in Paris, I think so. And then she just realized, oh, that in all of the table, there was no lady on the table. And it was really worrisome, worrying basically that nobody could think of the fact that anyway, organizing the event that something was. I mean, it's okay to have people, or we are not saying there's something wrong with the persons that were chosen. We're just saying that we needed some sort of diversity, some sort of representation across the speakers. So yes, that's we wanted to provide that context. So we realized that these things are actually happening in real time. It's usually very worrisome when we realize that there's not like a lot of diversity on the way we'd love to see. So yes, please.
Yeah, so it could even be something that you see a program and they say something about an African state. Maybe we're talking about let me just give an area of let's say space law in Africa, and then you don't have any African there. It would be very it will not be, and then you want to talk about space law exactly, or space in Africa generally, whether it's diplomacy, whether it's cooperation, and you don't have any African who's an expert in that field, who has years of experience on that seat or on that table. That's not diversity at all, because how then do you make decisions when the people who are directly affected, or the people who have worked or given years in that industry and who have the right information are not in the room? So I think that's the basis for our next question.
It's just almost cringe.
Next question.
So in this international table, you are shaking.
Okay, so I'll just go to the question. So, okay, why is diversity, especially gender and regional diversity, critical in international decision making? Because one, we're talking about women. Two, because we're talking about women in diplomacy. So, any of the speakers can unmute themselves and speak. Thank you. Okay, I see Henriette. Okay, Henriette.
Yeah, thank you. Can volunteer to be the first person to try and respond. I can say that when you look at our continent, mostly the African continent, space is relatively new. I don't think there's any African country that decides not to be on the table that makes decisions. And these decisions, we all know how space is affecting the whole world. It's a whole topic, yes, and we would always want to be there. But the question should rather be, what are we bringing on the table? What are we going to learn? What are we going to contribute? And looking at some of the emerging countries, specifically like Rwanda, we're trying to catch up so quickly. Having our space agency established in 2021, looking at the things that we have achieved as an agency, I think we are catching up with the rest of the world, and we believe that in the coming years, the gaps that you just mentioned are going to be closed. We believe we are going to be on each and every table that is going to make decisions specifically in space and specifically for women. And for women, I think as an African country, we have done quite a lot. I think we are one of the countries that have good numbers when it comes to members of the parliament. We have more than now 60% women in parliament. But when you talk about space, it being new on the continent, we believe we also get there sometime. And we are not stopping. This is the beginning of the journey. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Henriette. Thank you so much for your response. The next person, Alma or Gill, whoever wants to unmute and speak.
I'll tag on. to what Henriette said. And really, I like the fact that she reframed the questions, because sometimes I feel the quality of your answers is really based on the quality of your questions and your ability to really extract the right questions. You can see who was a good examiner-in-chief in law school. So yes, I love posing questions, because I think that's really the answer to everything, having the right questions. So you need to ask, okay, for instance, where are these tables? These tables that we all want to be on, imaginary or otherwise, where are they? What are they discussing on these tables? And is there an entry fee to sit at these tables to make these discussions? I don't know, I think maybe I should have done, I don't know, economics or something, because I always break things down to the economic value that needs to be either paid or received. And as much as we talk about gender, we talk about ageism, or even racial discrimination, I feel that the main discriminating factor a lot of the time is economic, and your ability to access certain opportunities or be in the room to discuss certain things. And we find that so much more, especially in this sector. I mean, it is not ideal to expect to build space programs based on handouts, which unfortunately is how you're positioning if you are not having economic discussions. And I'll share a story to show how that relates to discrimination. I went to a school in Eswatini for high school. It was called Swaziland at the time, now called Eswatini. And this particular school was set up as a direct response to apartheid. So it was a school where a lot of the ANC members' children went to, just so they could have a free and fair education outside of South Africa. So we were taught diversity from a very young age, that we were colorblind. Everybody got on, regardless of your background, the color of your skin, your gender, everybody just got on. But one day we decided to explore outside of the school premises. And we went to this place in South Africa, which was about maybe 3 hours drive, called Bad Plus. Now it was a water park. They had hot springs there. So as very young teenagers, maybe like 12, 13, we went on this school excursion there with our teachers. So we get in and we're so excited. We go running to the pool in our swimwear, ready to jump in. We jumped in, and firstly, it was a sea of white, and everybody white jumped out at the same time. And they went on to call us all sorts of names, which I'd rather not repeat. And I remember the group of us were maybe like 30 of us. We went from being shocked to being horrified to being mortified, and then just crying. And at which point we're like, okay, it's time to go back to school, to our safe haven in Swaziland. And our teacher, who was white South African, said, "You're not going anywhere. Nobody is leaving. If they're not comfortable, they can leave. We paid to be here, and we're going to enjoy our money's worth." So after the tears and all that, the consolations, we ended up having a good time. But what was the message? We paid to be there. Our finances granted us access to somewhere that ordinarily we may not have, we ordinarily or even traditionally would not have had access to. So a lot of the times when we talk about discrimination, what we're really talking about is financial differentiation. And even in the work that I've done here in Nigeria, like with healthcare in the IDP camps, trying to give primary healthcare access to internally displaced people, a lot of their medical issues would take 2,000 naira to solve. Like 2,000 naira is like $1.50 to solve. So what they really have is a financial access issue, and not really a discrimination matter. You find a lot of the conferences, they are in the space sector are expensive for Africans to attend. So it's not like they don't have anything to say or they don't want to participate, but the financial barrier to actually be there, sometimes is an impediment, unfortunately. So rather than thinking of it in terms of gender racial or whatever other sort of bias, which they do exist, and I personally experienced it, focus on the financial empowerment, because it does, in Nigeria, we say it settles a lot of matters, settles a lot of things. Okay, so that's my 2 cents.
Thank you so much, Alma. Thank you so much. Let's to pick there. Financial resources is very, very, very important. It's important, yeah. Okay, so Gill, we're coming.
Yeah, no, I think you've all made very good points, and I think the title of this discussion was around breaking down barriers, and financial barriers are incredibly important when it comes to the space sector, and they are excluding countries from the negotiating table, from that entry fee to be part of discussions. But then I think back to sort of the start of the discussion today and listening to Aarti talking about the role of the UN. And there's an opportunity where I feel like the entry fee isn't there. You can associate, you can be an observer before you've signed the treaties, for example. And there's an opportunity to watch diplomacy in action, but then also to participate and to be part of global discussions around policy, around solutions, and to sort of understand the different perspectives of member states. So I think, like, you're absolutely right. There are a lot of barriers and there are a lot of impediments when it comes to really embedding diversity. But at the same time, it's also about using the opportunities we have in those few forums that we do have where we can all get in, and just making our voices heard in those environments as a compliment rather than yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So much.
No,
I think I hand over to you now.
Okay, great. Thank you so much to all of our speakers. Amazing responses. I really love how we've been able to, like I said, the webinar will be value filled. Have people not been enjoying value, gaining value from the webinar? So thank you so much to all of our speakers for dishing out so much value. You see, free entry. Nobody had to pay anything to attend, and we are dishing premium value to everybody. So this is how we are dismantling the the barriers that we have to, having to learn things that are going to be really important eventually when you get to rooms where you get to make impactful decisions that touches everywhere across the continent. So what we want to do is, before we ask the last question, the question, or giving parting advice to everybody on the call, we would want to do the interactive section. Let's hear from the participants. If they have any question, or because we want to hear from the participants to know what they think, or if they have a. So I know there is a question on the chat box. Yeah. Tando, I don't know if you're still on the call. So Tando is from Zimbabwe. Yeah. No, I think I'm going to hold my. I wanted to give like a very, very good brief rundown of what Tando does, but I'm going to let Tando do it. And I'm not going to read out the question. So Tando, you better speak up. I don't know if you're still on the call. Let me see. Tando, are you still on the call?
Well, I am on the call, but I'm next to a construction site, so I don't know if you can hear me clearly.
Yes, we can. So please, I would like you to actually read out the question. Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. Amazing panel, great value, as you said. And my question was to do with the recently enacted Africa Space Cooperation, with the EU. It's not a new thing, it's a culmination of over 20 years of cooperation in the space sector. And I was wondering if there's going to be any impact at all, or if you see any sort of grassroots science diplomacy playing a role in defining the terms of engagement. Because, we've had situations where when we're cooperating, when Africa is cooperating with external players, the terms under which they cooperate are very, I cannot call them unfair, but they're poorly negotiated. For example, you might have a cooperation agreement that dictates where and from whom you're supposed to buy, let's say, satellite components, for example. And, with a 100 million euro investment by the EU, I think it opens up a lot of space for everyone to play. So, to summarize my question, do you see any low-level diplomacy having an impact in such an agreement? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Antando. So we'll hear from all of the speakers. I don't know if Professor Nana is back on the call. Professor Nana, are you back on the call? I can't quite seem to see her. So we'll just start with three speakers we have here, and I don't know, hopefully he's still able to join the call before we round off. So let's see who goes first. Who has not gone first today? So I think Alma has gone first. Henriette have gone first. Masera has gone first. Oh, let's see. Okay.
I'll just go ahead, Yoma. I think that is a fantastic question, Tando. And with a perhaps not so straightforward answer. In an ideal world, yes, you would expect that there would be some provision for grassroots voices to be interpreted through, the implementation of these sort of agreements. But funnily enough, I'm actually in the course of my research, which I'm doing at the moment, looking into whether cooperation actually exists as a concept, because some academics actually believe that there's no such thing as international cooperation, because one party must always give up something, right? So what we should actually be speaking of is international collaboration. That's only when you can actually achieve a win-win situation, but that's a discussion for another day. So in terms of actually having that level of, grassroots science diplomacy, I feel that is a factor, or it's expressed through awareness. How aware are the various stakeholders of either the contents of these agreements or how they are being, translated within their various countries? I am not too clear on the finer details of how exactly that tranche of money is supposed to be expended, in what areas it's supposed to be utilized. But I would imagine, if I read something recently, I think there has been some provision for outreach activities, outreach in the sense of awareness, running, I think, not space diplomacy, but more like outreach activities that inform the public about the benefits of space. I feel that is important for getting the messaging across. And really, there have to be programs that target the youth. The youth is really Africa's hugest resource, with a very young population. So if there are no stipulations as to how young professionals can be included in the delivery of some of these projects, or how the capacity building component is, or know-how transfer or capacity building is built into some of these agreements down the actual value chain for implementation, then I feel that's how the grassroots can be tackled. But to the best of my knowledge, I don't know if this is actually being done, but in terms of implementation, that is what I would suggest. Ensuring that firstly, the youth are included, and that there is a lot of awareness activities, whether it be outreach or otherwise, to ensure that not only is it understood why these contracts exist, but the benefits in the intended outcomes of the contracts are made known.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So guys, I was writing because I mean, I think it's something I've noticed when I go for webinars. People just, I don't know, maybe probably they are typing on their phones or whatever, but I feel like when value is pouring, you need to catch it so it doesn't pour away. So thank you very much, Alma, for that very beautiful answer. Okay, so Sarah, if you want to go next.
Sure. I mean, it's a good question, and so I can't speak to that specific agreement, but I can speak to others that we've organized in the past as a space agency. And I think there's always an element of top down and then bottom up from our side. So, for example, the International Bilateral Fund that we set up, we look to the academic community, we look to industry for relationships that they'd already started to build with emerging space nations, and look to them to say, this is where we think there are those opportunities. And then we sort of marry that with the top-down approach, which is saying, okay, well, we know that we are looking for diplomatic relationships with these 5 countries or whatever it is. And you try and find that sweet spot in between where you're marrying a top-down with a bottom-up approach. Because if you don't have that sector buy-in and some of that relationship building happening at the grassroots level, it's quite difficult to then just say, okay, I'm going to put money aside for this relationship, go and make something happen. It's better if you're doing it when you already have something there, and then you can build from that. So yeah, that sort of 2-pronged approach seems to work quite well. And then the sector also feel like they have a role in shaping those relationships and directing them as well. It's been my experience.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for that.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Chioma. I think I'll also give an example of what we are doing, not specifically to what Tando asked, because I don't have much visibility on how the expense is going to be divided. But as a space agency, as I mentioned, we are new in the sector, but what we are doing here is really empowering the next generation and also investing a lot in human capacity development. When I talk about human capacity development, I can be specific. When it comes to education, we are working with the Ministry of Education here in Rwanda to see if space-related courses can be incorporated in their curriculum. What will this lead to? It will lead to good skills when it comes to space, so that we don't have to outsource from our different partners. We want everything to be built in our country. And also when it comes to internship opportunities and other great opportunities that the youth, that the next generation is looking forward to, that's what we are also doing at the agency. But generally, when it comes to the youth here in Rwanda, I think there's a lot of support that is provided for them, not only in space, but in different programs. And when you're talking about international collaboration, what they can do for the youth, I also think the question should come back to the youth themselves. What do they want to achieve? Because being the youth, you're so ambitious, you don't have an orientation where you want to see yourself, let's say, in 5 or 10 years, but how you going, what the right questions that you have, you want to have them responded to guide you in your future career. I think that's also the role that the youth should play, so that when you're specific that, let's say, I want to pursue a career in space, then you would be clear that I'll be focusing on the people that are doing a lot in space to mentor me, and then explore the opportunities that are there, because there's so many. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Henriette, for that very beautiful answer. Tando, I don't know if your question is answered. Tando, I don't know if you can hear us or.
Yes, thank you. My question has been answered in part, and it has also been rephrased, and that allowed the panelists to address other issues that I have not necessarily looked at. But yeah, thank you so much. Part of the question has been answered. It's very good to be here and to have such experts.
Okay, so Tando, let me stop you right there. So because now I'm a bit concerned because now you're saying part of the question as well. You really emphasize on that part of the question has been answered. It means that another part of the question has not been answered. So if it's possible, you have 45 seconds to probably talk about maybe the part of the question that was not answered. Let's see if we can get more answers on that in the next 2 or 3 minutes.
I think this becomes sort of a yes or no thing. To see if bottom-up approaches have a place in the space sector. Do bottom-up approaches have a place in the space sector?
From my perspective, for sure. But I think most of us would agree on that there is a place for bottom-up approaches. I think it's just about how much traction they get depending on what's being discussed.
Okay. Sorry, I think I lost connection for a second. Can everybody hear me? Oh, okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. So Tando, I don't know if you have the full answer now.
Yes. I have been answered.
Great, thank you. Is there any other question from the audience? Any other thing you would love the speakers to clarify before we move on to the last question for the day? Because we're trying to, take the time and wrap this up in the next, 10, 15 minutes and tops. So please, any more question? Okay, it mustn't be question. You can hail the speakers. You can tell them thank you. We can begin to say thank you now before we get to the part where we actually officially say thank you to the speakers for speaking to us today. If you want to make a comment or okay, so I think we have something in the chat box. Let me see. Oh, okay. No, that's not so I don't know. I can't see any comments, so we'll just move ahead. Hopefully, before the event is over, we'll get more comments. Okay. Yes. Thank you, Kando. So Esosa, please, I would hand over to you now to ask the last question for A. Thank you.
Follow Google. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Shoma. Okay. So last question. I've had a very interesting and a very engaging time today. I think I picked one or two things that I've also learned. So our final question for the speakers, and this one is for, because on this call, we have people who are professionals, we have people who are students, we have people who want to work in this field and they want to know. And so our questions are for the speakers, and it's what advice would you give to students and early career professionals looking to enter into the field of space? That's the final question. So that's the last question. And for the speakers, what advice would you give to students and early career professionals looking to enter the field of space from your perspective? Okay, so Gill, you can start first and then can go like that way.
Sure. I think the first bit of advice that I like to give to most people who want to enter a career in the space sector is that space needs everybody. It needs HR people, it needs finance people, it needs software people, it needs office administrators. They're the biggest barrier we have in terms of getting people into the sector is them just not knowing that there are those opportunities. So there are a lot of websites now that are dedicated to linking students up with potential roles in the space sector. And there's quite a lot of work, I know, particularly in the UK, which is looking at how to link university students as they come out with internships and things like that. So I think if you are interested in a career in space, just remember that it is open and there are lots of different avenues, and they might not be as traditional as you think. You don't have to be an engineer, for example, or a scientist, or you can have a diverse background and still find a way in. So that's always my main piece of advice to people.
Yeah, I like that. There's a place for everyone. You don't have to be space engineer or an astronaut, because anytime people think of space, I think the first thing that comes to your mind is you think about astronauts and science and STEM. Okay. All right. So I'll go straight to Henriette. Advice for early career researchers and students, early career professionals and students.
I think it's to ask questions. As Gill mentioned, space doesn't exclude anyone. It needs every single profession. But how are your skills going to contribute to the development of the space that you want to be part of? I think the first advice I can give to the youth or younger me is be curious, ask questions, ask the right questions, and ask the right people to guide you along the way. You can be anything, you can contribute a lot in space, but all you need to do is to have the right guidance, and you can only get that if you ask.
Thank you so much, Henriette. Ask wise questions. All right, so I'll go to Alma. Alma, advice for early career professionals.
Yeah, so really great advice from the previous panelist, which really is very similar to what I would say. I mean, unlike me, be aware of the space sector. First of all, I mean, do your research, know what is available, know its breadth and how all the various options that are available. I would say volunteer. Of course, I'm going to plug World Space Week. Do a World Space Week event. Be like Choma. Let it drain you. See, and then know and of a truth, it will tell you whether you actually want to be in this space or whether you are just maybe perhaps glamorizing it in your head, right? Put your back into it, and get involved as much as possible. There's one thing about the space sector, there's a lot of voluntary work, right? If you want to volunteer for 366 days a year, there's work. There's more than enough opportunities to do that in space. So explore those opportunities. I would say network as much as possible. You'd find that a lot of opportunities are not necessarily advertised. They might be just through word of mouth. So, and the sector is growing, but it's still quite small. So get speaking to people, irrespective of their position. I have found that people are very welcoming, by and large, are very open, and they're just waiting to be approached, really. They won't approach you, but they're receptive when they're approached. So I would say, yeah, network, try and get involved in voluntary activities as much as possible until that opportunity presents itself. And if you're a student, don't think that STEM is the only route. I know I do advocate for STEM, but of course, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an engineer, and I'm a lawyer. So that goes to show that there are many routes into space. So choose the one that is most reflective of what you want to do. Don't feel you need to fit into a mold. So that's my advice.
It's just, I think you're muted.
Thank you, Alma. Thank you so much. We have a question that just came in, so I think I'll just throw this question. I think you can start off with the question, and then Gill and Henriette can also just throw more light as well. And the question is from Tats Kuzwa. He says, as youth, we want to contribute to the space sector. The challenge is we have financial issues that limit our dreams. So how best can you help youths in the space sector and also to be supported by the space opportunities? And so I guess what he's saying is how they can contribute and how to address the financial challenges and also how they are able to access or see these space opportunities in the space sector. Yeah.
I can see that Yara has given a great response to the sort of organizations that actually do exist that provide student discounts. And you have organizations like the SJC that also allow you opportunities to not only volunteer, but they have a lot of scholarships for you to attend various events across the globe. Of course, they're competitive. You'd have to compete with other young professionals across the globe to get certain opportunities. But that, I believe, only improves your capacity when you do that. And there normally it's just a matter of finding them, which is why awareness is where it starts for everything. Having those looks on LinkedIn to see, you know, like for the IEC, I know for young professionals, there are normally a lot of opportunities for sponsorship by various organizations, not just SJC. I think Secure World Foundation also offers some form of sponsorship to get young people to the IAC, and other organizations, you know, may ask you to write an essay or something like that, or do some artwork, and you know, and potentially you could end up at the IAC. So there are always opportunities like that. It's just a matter of perhaps scrolling through LinkedIn, looking at SJC updates as well.
Thank you, Alma. Okay, so Jill.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to that. I think Alma pretty much covered it. If you
Okay.
use things like social media networks, LinkedIn, and follow updates from, in particular, the SGAC, I think they publicize a lot of opportunities. So yeah, lots of ways to get information. It's just a question of following the right organizations, I think.
Okay, so before I go to Henriette, I was just going to announce to tell Tazuka that you can use social media, you can follow handles, you can follow the speakers here, because they will definitely repost. What I find is that LinkedIn is a huge resource for events, scholarships, programs, resources, volunteering opportunities, because people who are in that sector will keep reposting opportunities that they see. And then also, ASLI, we have our space policy and strategy course that's coming up. We had made out the call before, and we had essays that needed to have been submitted. So you can follow ASLI on their website on LinkedIn, and then you'll be able to know whenever there's something going on and other things that we can also repost from other space-based agencies. Yeah. So Henriette.
I don't think there's so much for me to add on. I think my colleagues really captured everything. But maybe one of the things that they did mention is that it's also good to start with your country. If you want to develop space is usually a national idea or national. It comes with the belonging. So you can focus on your country, see some of the great initiatives that they are doing, ask the right questions. This is key, and then I'm sure your dreams will come to reality. So start with your country, exploring what they're doing, and I'm sure you can get great support. Yeah.
Thank you so much to all the speakers. Thank you, Alma. Thank you, Henriette. Thank you, Jill, for all the information and everything that you have shared. Tazuka, I hope you have heard and you have listened. You can also follow ASLI on their LinkedIn page. I will just also put a link to ASLI's website. Then you can also follow ASLI on LinkedIn. And then you can also, as well, maybe follow speakers as well. So I'll just hand over to Shema, who would then, take it up from here. Shema, over to you now.
Thank you so much, Isusa, and thank you very much, all of us speakers. Before I do like a final thank you to us, because I think I need to quickly point out something. So I've noticed a pattern, because I'm very sort of active on Twitter, now X. I would often see people tweet, "Oh, that LinkedIn is so fake that people are always saying happy to announce, and they never start to announce anything. That why can't they be real?" And it's so funny because I sometimes I'll go through the comments and I see young people following people on Twitter or X, as we now call it, to say that LinkedIn is fake. I almost want to say I'm very sorry for you, but I'm going to be diplomatic and say, please don't join them. Please don't join people on Twitter to say, oh, that LinkedIn is a fake place or LinkedIn is so serious, so uptight. I would often say that every tool is what you make out of it. So if you say LinkedIn as a hub of opportunity, depending on who you follow, I believe it's going to be really beneficial for you. You're going to gain not just opportunities, you're able to give back. So you're not just only a taker, but you're able to give value to other people too. So please make use of your LinkedIn. Don't join people on X to say, oh, that LinkedIn is so serious and so uptight. Please make use of your LinkedIn and try to connect with people, be professional, be respectful. And I believe people would also extend the same courtesy to you when you're respectful and courteous to them. So yes, now to the we have 3 minutes before it's 3 p.m. So thank you so much to all of our speakers. Thank you for sharing your stories. I mean, it makes all of our speakers so relatable. Thank you so much for speaking to the heart of the webinar topic. I'm really happy that we had this session today. Thank you so much to everybody that engaged in the chat box. You made it really engaging, very conversational, and it went beyond just a webinar to actually being, like I called it when we started, a family meeting. Thank you so much to everybody that's contributed, to ASLI for giving us a platform basically to have this conversation today. I'm very happy we did this today. So just in 2 minutes, I think I'll call Mr. Atim to just round it off, and then we bid each other farewell, and hopefully we would see in future space events. Thank you, guys.
Yes, thank you. And I don't want to delay anyone any further. We've been here for about 2 hours. Chioma has already thanked everyone, so thank you. But also to thank Chioma and Esusa. I don't know that it was an omission, but you didn't get to introduce yourselves. Chioma is the NPOC for SGAC, the Nigerian NPOC for SGAC. And I think she was also the coordinator for the Moon Village Association, the immediate past, something like that. So thank you for hosting the program. Then Esosa is a volunteer with ASLI, and she's also a lawyer like Alma and some other colleagues here. So thank you very much. Just thank you. I think we've said so much, so we just to think about the things we said and see how we can leverage on it and possibly pass it forward also to mentor other young people. Just to remind us about the space diplomacy course that is coming up in October, and we look forward to having you, SJ again. SJ, you're going to give us a lecture again this year. I've not communicated with you yet, but just to mention it here, and then maybe others that I'll reach out to, but still second week in October. And then for those who are attending Kupus, I wish you fruitful deliberations. Thank you, and bye for now.
Thank you, guys. Bye, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.